The purpose of this presentation is to provide an introduction on how to download, reference, and modify the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications within the SPECSINTACT software to fit your project-specific needs. Throughout this presentation, we may use the terms green infrastructure or the acronym GSI when referring to green stormwater infrastructure. So for a little bit of background on the SPECSINTACT software, SPECSINTACT is a specification management system for developing and editing standardized specifications. SPECSINTACT is a free government-funded software developed by NASA that uses the Unified Facilities Guide specifications, or better known as UFGS, that are regularly updated and maintained by multiple participating federal government agencies. These include the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, the Air Force Civil Engineer Center, and NASA. In addition to access to the UFGS master specifications, the user can develop additional baseline specification files that can then be edited for individual projects without adjusting those baselines. The system provides a built-in quality control measure system by relying on a tagging system that allows for easy, consistent editing of information throughout all the project specifications. Some of the automated SPECSINTACT features include paragraph numbering, internal and external reference checking and updating, and submittal reference updating. Additionally, when the user is ready to publish to PDF, the program allows for integrated bookmarking, table of contents creation, a submittal register that summarizes all submittals included as part of the project, and additional quality assurance reporting tools. We'll talk a little bit about each of these today and how they're used in the Kansas City, Missouri Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications. So as you probably could have guessed by now, the SPECSINTACT software was used to develop the Green Stormwater Infrastructure construction specifications that are housed in Appendix C of the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Manual. A common issue observed during the initial Green Stormwater Infrastructure projects was discrepancies between quote-unquote standard specification sections. Because of this, significant time was spent reviewing, compiling, revising, and re-revising the city standard specs for every single project. The SPECSINTACT software is set up to facilitate use of a standard baseline that every project starts from, with guided prompts for project-specific tailoring. Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications have been developed inside this software for use on city projects. To keep some consistency across each section, a common outline is used on each Green Stormwater Infrastructure specification. Part 1, General, focuses on the pre-construction considerations like submittals, QA/QC, and storage and handling procedures. Part 2, Products, covers the materials required to build each component, allowing the designer to use decision points to remove any non-applicable materials. This part is unique to each specification. Part 3, Execution, includes requirements related to actual construction of the component, as well as required maintenance, post-construction testing, and warranty considerations. To keep the consistency among the sections and subsection headers of each specification, within Parts 1 and 3, not applicable text was used for any of these sections that were not relevant to that component specification. So for instance, if the specific section you're looking at does not have any post-construction testing requirements, 3.07 is still included in that spec, just with the text not applicable below it. Because Part 2 is component/material specific, standard numbering was not used. Instead, each subpart is set up by individual product or materials needed to build that component. When reviewing and editing the specification, decision points are used to select each material that is applicable to the project's component. So for instance, if your project uses sand and compost, but it does not use clean aggregate, the designer can then use decision points to remove non-applicable parts of that spec. So enough background, let's talk about how to actually use the SPECSINTACT software for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications. First, you're going to navigate to the SPECSINTACT website and download the free software. The link is included on this slide. The website requires submittal of your email, name, company, and phone number to start the download. A link to download the executable or the .exe file is available immediately after the user information is submitted. Follow the installation wizard throughout the setup process. Once download is complete, open the program and follow the prompts to allow the software to set up the default working directory and to pull in the UFGS masters. The working directory will create a SPECSINTACT folder within your typical Documents folder on your computer. Next, to download the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications, navigate to the KC Water website at the link shown and select the Editable GSI specifications. This will download a .zip folder with the individual SPECSINTACT editable files for each standard Green Stormwater Infrastructure section. So I'm going to introduce you to some SPECSINTACT lingo only because we'll be using it throughout this training. The master is the Green Stormwater Infrastructure baseline standard specification. This will serve as a starting point from which a unique project specification can be developed. These unique edited project specifications are called jobs, which pull from the master that you just downloaded off the city website. This allows for adapting to meet your project's needs without migrating too far from the intent of the baseline spec. To guide the user through portions of the specification that are intended to be edited, and more importantly, to guide them away from the text that should not be edited, decision points are used. These are identified by bracketed text and include material, information, or details that frequently change from project to project and require designer input. For the few project-specific decisions that should be applied to the whole project rather than on a section-by-section basis, tailoring options are used. These apply global changes without requiring the user to edit each individual section. Before you can start creating jobs and working through decision points, the master file must be linked. I'm going to talk through these steps briefly now, but the next slide will walk you through them again with a video demonstration. Begin by opening the File Explorer and routing to the previously downloaded standard specification zip file from your Downloads folder. You'll extract and/or paste these extracted files into the Masters folder that the software download created. The file pathway shown here should help you navigate to this location, though you'll need to select your specific username folder where highlighted in the path shown. Once this is complete, you'll open the SPECSINTACT software and click the Connect Masters button on the upper ribbon shown here. A window will appear where you can select the checkbox beside the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specification file and set the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specification file as the default master in a drop-down menu. Then click the box beside the UFGS specification file to uncheck it. It is important to go in the order described here. The next slide shows a short video demonstrating this process. This video picks up after the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications have been downloaded from the city's website and extracted and copied from the downloaded location, typically your computer's Downloads folder. The user navigates to the SPECSINTACT folder on their C drive, opens the Masters folder, and pastes the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specification masters here. We then go back to the SPECSINTACT program, click on the Connect Masters button, check the box for the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications, use the drop-down to make these the default masters to be used, and then uncheck the UFGS master. As I've probably mentioned several times now, the master is the baseline spec and should not be edited. Instead, you need to set up a job that essentially creates a copy of that master to be edited for individual projects. If the master is inadvertently edited, it's not a big deal. Just re-download the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications from the city website and repeat the steps from the previous slide to restore the correct baseline version. The same process can be followed as the specifications are updated and newer versions become available on the city website. When ready to start using the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications on a specific project, you'll select New Job on the top ribbon and fill in the required project information in the dialog box that appears. The video on the following slide will demonstrate this process. Start by clicking New Job from the top pane. This will pop up a new window for their project properties. Under the General tab, you can fill in the job name, which doesn't allow for any spaces or special characters, so this could be a good place for your project number. The title, on the other hand, does allow for spaces and special characters, so it's a good spot for your project description. Make sure under Primary Master, the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications are selected. Next, under the Options tab, make sure to select the alphanumeric option for the paragraph format. This is important because it keeps the formatting consistent with other city standards as well as American Public Works Association, or APWA, standard specifications. Select OK when finished inputting initial job parameters or properties. Please note that you can always access and revise these properties later on by right-clicking on the job in the main viewer and selecting Properties from the drop-down list. A majority of the information input in the job options provides later automation options for header-footer settings when ready to PDF the project specifications. Next, we're going to talk about how to add applicable sections to your project. But before we do that, it's recommended that you update one additional job property in order to use the 1995 version of the Construction Specifications Institute, or CSI, master format. The 1995 CSI master format version uses a 16-division organization and a 5-digit section numbering that is also consistent with the city and regional, such as APWA, standard specifications. The SPECSINTACT default is the current master spec version, which uses a 50-division organization and a 6-digit specification numbering system. Setting this property now will avoid warning messages later as you add sections to your job. Once this property is set, you are ready to add the Green Stormwater Infrastructure master specifications to your project. Since not all the standard sections will be applicable to every project, the user is able to pick and choose which ones apply. A short video on the following slide provides visual instructions on setting the master format version and adding sections to your job. We're going to start by getting back into your job properties. So right-click the job name in the left panel and select Properties. Select the Options tab and under CSI Master Format, select 1995. Disregard the red warning text that appears as this is not applicable to the city standard numbering system and select OK. When you're ready to add the Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications to your job, click Add Sections on the top row of buttons on the main page. In the window that appears, select the Master Specifications in the Division 2 Specification checkboxes, then use the arrows to expand the list. Using the boxes, unselect any sections that are not applicable to the project and click Add, then select OK. You've now added all of these green infrastructure specifications to your project. The next step is tailoring your job. Tailoring options are intended to make specification editing easier by globally defining some of the repetitive decision points within the specification. Tailoring options can be applied throughout individual sections or to the entire job. Currently, 3 tailoring options are set up in the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Master Specifications. These are selecting whether the project is a consent decree or non-consent decree project. Consent decree projects have some differing but important contractual terms defining when the project is operational. Normal city projects typically use substantial completion, whereas consent decree projects use the term achievement of full operation. Choosing consent decree or non-consent decree here sets this terminology throughout the Green Stormwater Infrastructure sections to be consistent with the project's standard front ends. The second tailoring option is to define who the contractor should look to for technical direction during construction, the design professional or the owner. This is intended to allow flexibility for projects that have design professional construction phase services, as well as projects that the city oversees during construction. And lastly, options have been set up for both lump sum or unit price contracts, again, to be flexible across multiple city department standard contract terms. To start tailoring your job at any time, right-click the job and select Tailor Job. Having the Use Revisions box checked at the top will track the selections made with the red line changes to the specifications. This is helpful and recommended for review purposes. Selecting Automatically Applied Check/Uncheck to Identical Tailoring Options in All Sections box will apply your selections on the 3 tailoring options to all sections, thereby limiting the designer's need to tailor each section. You can see how your same selections are applied throughout when you scroll through the list of sections. Once the fields are updated, click OK and wait for the system to update. It may take a few minutes as it is applying a large global change to your project specification. You are now ready to edit your job specifications to fit your project's design needs. When you first start editing a section, the tailoring options you selected will pop up for verification, giving you another opportunity to change these options or to accept your previous selections. If you're changing your selections, please note that highlighted text represents the selected option and that you can select multiple options by holding down the Control key. Once you're in the editor window, there are some settings that make the editor easier to view and interact with, such as turning off the tags and Notes to Specifier buttons so that you don't see the coding behind the text or the UFGS standard notes to specifiers. These view options are toggled on and off by the Tag and Paper with Eyeglasses buttons shown here. Users should also take care to verify the revisions option is selected so that changes are tracked for reviewing purposes. You can do this using the TXT with the red line through it button. Once these settings are applied, the specifier is ready to edit the specification by using the Replace Bracket tool that walks them through the decision points throughout the section. To start this, you'll click the binoculars over a blue bracket button. This guides the user to the portions of the specifications that are intended to be customized for each project. When using the decision points, the specifier can either select one or multiple options to keep the text listed, remove the text altogether, or can create custom text. The following slide provides an example of how to use the SPECSINTACT editor in decision points. You can get to the SPECSINTACT editor by either right-clicking the section you want and selecting Edit, or by selecting the Edit button in the upper ribbon. The video then shows how to turn off the tags and notes the specifier so the text is easier to read. Also notice that the revisions are already toggled on, but this is always good to check before starting any editing. Next, we click the Replace Brackets button to start customizing the specification. This first example shows how you can select the section's components that apply to your project by highlighting those lines with the Select Items Above button toggled and selecting Replace. The editor then jumps the user to the next decision point in the text, where this time we have to replace the standard option by entering the customized text in the box, turning on the New Text Below button, and selecting Replace. The specifier can always select Ignore to skip the decision points for the time being and come back to those later. Also, please notice that in this example, you can see how your selected decisions are tracked in the changes made throughout the text. This can expedite the review process by allowing the reviewer to focus only on the portions of the baseline green infrastructure specifications that have been revised. Once the user has finished editing the green stormwater infrastructure specifications for their project, they can publish the specs to a PDF. There are a lot of customizable printing options within SPECSINTACT, and the next few slides will go over some of these main options. The check marks shown on the slides indicate preferred options to have checked when printing and publishing the green stormwater infrastructure specifications. The first tab, Sections, allows you to print specifications as individual PDF sections or as a single compiled PDF. The publishing stage is also where some of the automated QA/QC features come into play. These include automatically renumbering paragraphs based on what's been deleted, as well as updating references and submittals as part of the specifications accordingly. Select your job and select Print Publish from the top ribbon. Under the Sections tab, choose whether you want to print some or all of the sections. Make sure that you have all the printing and renumbering and reconcile boxes checked so that the program automatically renumbers based on anything deleted or added to the spec. Then select SPECSINTACT PDF for your printer options at the bottom. The second tab under the printing option is the Reports tab, and it allows you to select which QA/QC reports you'd like to be generated. The green stormwater infrastructure specifications are currently coded to run the following. Bracket verification checks that there are no outstanding decision points that the designer may have missed. It creates a list of all outstanding decision points so that the designer can provide input where it's needed. So, for instance, when editing the specification, if the designer opts to ignore one of the decision points along the way, this is a good check for them to go back and fill in that information. Section verification verifies that all specification sections cross-referenced within each individual section are included in the overall project manual. It will create a list of sections that are referenced in the body of the text but not included in the table of contents. So this is a good check for you to make sure that you're not referencing any specification sections that you've left off the project altogether. The submittal register creates a list of every submittal required within the green infrastructure specifications. This is a pretty powerful and cool tool, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Last, you can generate a table of contents, which will include all the sections you opted to publish at that time. This can be especially useful during interim design phases where maybe you're not submitting the entire spec manual, but you're just submitting that initial table of contents of those sections you're requiring. The video shows the user going to the Reports tab in the Print window. The user then selects the 3 types of reports that are currently set up to work with the green stormwater infrastructure specifications. Last, they go over and they select to include a table of contents with the published PDF. The next few print tabs in the printing setup include Options, Headers and Footers, and PDF Publish tabs. The Options tab allows the user to turn on or off revisions for preliminary and final deliverables. You can also set page numbering to restart for each section or to be continuous for the full set that is published. Orphan control can be toggled on to keep from splitting important text, such as titles or table headers, across 2 pages. The Header/Footer tab allows you to customize what prints at the top and bottom of each page. Many of the job properties set up in the beginning are automated options for header and footer text. Page numbers, date, and customized text are also options. The final PDF Publish tab allows you to choose where your PDFs will save, and it allows you to print individual sections or a single compiled PDF. Both options will create bookmarks for the sections, parts, and subparts within your specifications. Here, the user starts with the Options tab and turns on Color and Revisions and turns off Section Dates. Section Dates will print the date entered in the individual section's properties under the title on each first page. It's recommended to leave this off and enter a date in the Header/Footer options to be consistent across all sections. Colors lets you see the revisions in red, as well as coded tags in the color they were in the SPECSINTACT editor. Then we make sure to check the boxes for page numbering and orphan control on the right. Under the Header/Footer tab, we select the job title and job name variables shown to go into the top left header rows. You can see the full list of automated variables in the pane on the right. Then we enter some customized text in the top center line of the header and add a publish date on the top right. Any info you input here, like the date, will print on every specification page, so this is a good place to set a consistent date for the spec book, rather than the section date option we saw on the previous tab. In the bottom left, we opt to have a single line footer listing the custom text section plus the section number variable, and then on the right, we add the custom text page plus the page number variable. Next, under the PDF Publish tab, we check the PDF Publish option and opt to specify a location to save the published PDF. If this is not selected, the PDF will be saved to the jobs directory on your C drive. I then choose to bookmark the sections so that they're easily navigated when viewing digitally. Last, I uncheck the combined option so that I will have an individual PDF for each specification section. When we're happy with all our options, we select Process and Publish to export the PDFs. You can open the PDFs from the locations you chose to save them from the previous video or directly from the SPECSINTACT software. In this example, you can see how our header and footer options printed, showing the job title and job name on the left, custom text in the middle, and the date on the right side of the header. Then, in the bottom, we can see the section number and page number in the footer. You can also see how the bookmarks show up on the left side of the PDF viewer, allowing the user to jump quickly from one part to another within the section. This example shows a Bluebeam viewer, but bookmarks would appear the same in Adobe. Last, you can see here how the revisions appear since we selected to show revisions in our print options and opted to print in color. To finish this off, I'm going to show you a couple of the QA/QC and reports that we opted to print in our print settings. Here's an example of the table of contents that was generated from selecting this option in the Print Publish settings. You can see we've got a full list of all of our green stormwater infrastructure specifications on the left with their titles on the right. Here we see an example of the bracket verification report. It lists all outstanding decision points and where those can be found in each specification section. Since we didn't complete any decision points before we published this, we have all the decision points that still need to be made for the project. This report can be used by reviewers to verify that there are no outstanding decision points within the specifications before finalizing. When the specifications are completed, this report should have no remaining brackets within the text. The section verification report lists all sections that are referenced within the specifications but were not included in the job. If it shows that green stormwater infrastructure specification sections are missing, it tells the specifier that they need to go back to the green stormwater infrastructure master and add those sections to their jobs. Because the green stormwater infrastructure specifications are the only city standards that are built in SPECSINTACT, this report will always show that references to the city standard front-end sections are missing. These references to 700 general conditions and 800 supplementary conditions represent key text that allows the green stormwater infrastructure specifications to connect critical timelines, definitions, and requirements defined in the front ends. This can still be used to double check that those reference sections make it into the overall project manual and are linking with the green stormwater infrastructure specifications as intended. Last but most definitely not least is the submittal register. The submittal register generates a full list of all submittals required within the specifications for your project. These are organized by specification and submittal type. The report then also provides the part and subpart locations where details on what material actually needs to be included with that submittal and where it can be found within the specification text. This can be very useful in communicating expectations to the contractor, especially if they are new to the green stormwater infrastructure specifications. It can also be helpful in tracking submittals throughout the construction process. And that really concludes your introduction on how to use the Kansas City, Missouri Green Stormwater Infrastructure specifications within the SPECSINTACT software. To finish up, here are the links again to download both the SPECSINTACT software as well as the Editable Green Stormwater Infrastructure specification files from the city website. Thanks for your time and consideration in utilizing these tools to improve green stormwater infrastructure design, construction, and implementation.